Welcome to episode 1 of the Elementary Music Teacher Podcast. I am so glad you're here. I'm Jessica, and I'm the founder of thedomesticmusician.com. And my passion and desire is to serve, mentor, and help other elementary music teachers who just need to gain traction in your teaching, or maybe you're just looking for a little bit of support or help along the way. If you're anything like me, I'm going to tell a little bit of my story. And when I first started out, I had a mentor teacher who taught 3rd grade, and she was amazing. She helped me with so much of the dynamics of my school building, classroom management. I felt like I could ask her questions, but she didn't know anything about music. And so I would watch the other teachers in my school building. You know, there was a team for 3rd grade and 2nd grade and so on. And although I had an amazing arts team, the art teacher or specials or whatever they call them at your school, you know, the art teacher, music, PE, and library, and usually computer are considered a team. Now, we share the commonality that we all have unique classrooms where we only see the students once a week usually, but they still did not know how to help me in my music classroom. And so I am so passionate about helping music teachers, just like I was, who don't know where to go for help. And you feel stuck and you feel like you're just like, how in the world do I gain traction in my teaching? My goal with each episode in this podcast is to give you sound advice that you can begin implementing in your classroom tomorrow, where you feel like you get some aha moments and some, oh my goodness, that sounds like me, or oh my gosh, yes, I totally agree. And you will find quickly that I'm pretty sarcastic. And I keep it real with you. That's just my personality. I'm very sarcastic and I keep things real in a nutshell. So I'm just so glad you're here. And I am so glad you found this podcast, because my goal and my hope with this podcast is that you are able to really feel like you are listening to a mentor, which is what it's supposed to be. So a little bit of my story, if you've never heard it before, is when I first started teaching, it was right out of college and it was the middle of the school year. I was planning to substitute teach for a few months and then start a teaching position in the fall. Well, lo and behold, a music position opened up, only one. And this was in Tulsa. This is where I lived. And I graduated from ORU and I got my teaching position. And I'd always told people, I really want to teach at a low-income school, and I would love to help start a music program from scratch. Those are honest words that came out of my mouth. And can you imagine the looks I got when I said that? God really does listen, let me tell you, because guess what job I got? An inner city school. It was a Title I school, and it had not had music for 7 years. Then I kind of thought to myself, is this really what I want to do? Because after getting hired, walking to this empty classroom, hearing the students next door, this 5th grade class who had an art teacher who was an actually long-term sub teacher, because our school only had art and they did not have music. Then they were wanting to go the music route and not have art, which I did not like that, but I obviously wanted a job too, right? And so I was listening to this long-term sub who was next to me, and the kids were just crazy. They were, I don't know any other word to put it. There was just so much noise. I saw pencils being thrown, and this is my very first teaching job, okay? And I knew my principal gave me 1 week to prepare, and then the kids were coming to me. So I was like, well, here we go. I have to do this. So I just kind of had to buckle my seatbelt and figure it out. And so I knew my students hadn't had music for 7 years. But I also knew I had to get some classroom management in place, because I was listening to what was happening next door. And although I didn't know every kid in the school, I didn't know any kids in the school, let's be honest, and I was only hearing one class, I knew, okay, they're used to that. And not only used to that in art, they don't know me. And I knew I needed a good classroom management system in place. So I spent many, many, many nights that week really writing out my classroom management plan, although I had just created one in college. It's different when you get your first job. So I created this classroom management plan. I really just started focusing on even just the kindergarten through 2nd grade objectives, because there was no way I could do 4th and 5th grade objectives with these kids who hadn't had music in forever. So I kept it really simple. I got my kiddos up moving, and I got them doing a lot of body percussion, and we started singing. I didn't have any instruments. I didn't have any of the fancy bells and whistles you see in a lot of the music classrooms, which I think those are amazing things to have. But I want to encourage you, which you'll hear all through this podcast, that if you are starting out with no resources or little resources, every student has a body and has a voice that they can use to make music. So that's what I did. I'm not going to lie to you. Those first 4 months of my music teaching career were extremely hard, extremely, extremely hard. And my encouragement to any new music teacher, if it's your first year teaching, I promise you, year 2 gets better, year 3 gets better, and it's usually, honestly, and I've talked to a lot of teachers who said the same thing because I've been curious, after 3 years, you start really feeling like it's your classroom, that you really have figured out a good system, that you've really found lessons that work with your students, that you've really just figured it out. Does it mean everything's perfect? Of course not. Does it mean you're just like, you don't ever need mentorship again or help or to go to workshops? No. It just means you start kind of really getting an idea of what you're wanting to do. So when I get a lot of questions about classroom management or how to teach or what do I do with the student or how do I know what to teach, my biggest piece of advice is to just get in there and do it. And that's kind of with anything in life, right? You don't really know until you try. Your first year teaching, like it was for me, let me tell you, my gosh, it was a lot of trial and error. A lot of, let me do this. Oh, that didn't work. Okay, let's change it up. So that's my other piece of advice. If it doesn't work, change it up. You don't have to do something if it's not working, but you're not going to know if it works unless you try. So that is a little bit of my background and my story. And so with that, thinking back to my mentor who she didn't know anything about music. And like I said, I didn't know any other music teachers in my district because I was brand new. I didn't know who to ask for help. I mean, Google was my best friend, and it just became ridiculous how many times I would have to Google a question because I didn't know where to go for help. And so my goal with this podcast is for you to be able to listen. If you're needing advice, search through the different episodes and find the advice you're needing. Feel free. I want you to be listening in your car and just feel like you can take a deep breath because you're getting the help in the advice you've been needing but didn't know where to go to ask, if that makes sense. So please know I'm here for you, and my heart and my passion is to serve you and to create episodes that really give you the good chunks of advice you've been needing. And I hope you can hear that in my voice, that I am 100% serious. And I'm so glad you're listening to this podcast. Friend, you are right where you need to be. And I promise you that I am rooting you on every single day in your classroom when you are teaching your students. You are at the exact school you need to be at with the exact students you need to be at. And I do not think you are there on accident. Have an amazing rest of your week, whatever day you're listening to this to, and I cannot wait for you to continue listening.